Gigabyte B850 Aorus Elite thus matches what this board can deliver. I'm so excited is because I want to show you the VRM. Why does the MOSFET stay so cool? And look at the VRM. The temperature is fantastic. See, it's very consistent and the ping rate is very good. Very consistent, even better connection. First impression, there is only one word: splendid. Hi everyone, today we're going to have a look at this Gigabyte B850 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7. I'd like to thank Gigabyte for your generosity to have provided this 2-cube mascot known as the Aorus Chibi, and also the loan unit for me to share with everyone. Now, when you first unbox, you'll be provided with this: a set of SATA cables, which is one right angle, the other is straight. The G Connect, which is meant for you to plug your front I/O connectors and to have a one plug solution. Nice. A case badge, the Wi-Fi antenna, and for this Wi-Fi antenna, the base is magnetic. See, nice touch. In fact, it looks more like a PS2. Okay. And a set of manual, and of course the main unit. This is a 6-layer ATX form factor motherboard, and it has 2 ounces of copper traces. The measurements for the length is at 305mm, and for the width is at 244mm. For the side VRM heatsink, from the motherboard to the top, this is at 30mm, and for the rear, from the motherboard to the top, is at 50mm. Now, there are tons of things I'd like to talk about this motherboard. Starting off with the design. Now, at the top, I love this design so much. It's so subtle. It's not so aggressive like all the labeling all over. It's just a touch of wordings, and with blocks and strips, having 3 contrasts: matte black, gloss black, and the gray, with a touch of white wording. So we make this thing very elegant. Same goes to the top, the side VRM heatsink. It follows the pattern, as in like having strips and having block. Now, coming to the bottom section, this opinion of mine, right, might not have much impact, but it's just my take. When you place your graphic card, either horizontally or vertically, right, anyway, this will be covered. But without that, if I'm going to look at the overall aesthetic of this board, since the top is designed in a very rectangularish kind of shape with those labeling, right, the only thing that is bugging me on this design is this matrix over here. When I look at it from far, right, it doesn't blend in. See? So wouldn't it be better that they follow the stripes and the block at the top over here? Imagine you don't have all this curvy, this matrix kind of graph here. Just straight lines or straight block, or should I say a whole gray strip. Same goes to here. And this tribute head, right, I know it's nice to place it over here, but I find that it would be better if you place the logo over here too, so it will just blend in one formation, rather than having the block shape at the top and your side VRM heatsink. And over here, right, with all this jacket, yes, it did break off the pattern, but it's just that I find that it doesn't really blend in one shape. Well, that's my opinion. Alright, now come to talk about the power face of this motherboard. This is the unique part. It has a power face of 14 plus 2 plus 2. And as for the amperage of the motherboard, right, fantastic. Okay, before doing all this illustration, I did run this board, and it's really rock stable. Plus the cooling solution on the VRM is fantastic, and I'll explain to you why. Now, based on the fact that I told you this is 14 plus 2 plus 2, right, the 14 phase, in fact, they have this technology known as twin digital VRM, which runs 7 plus 7, and it has an amperage of 80 amp. With this amperage, right, if you total up together, right, it's more than enough to run a high-end processor, inclusive of the 7000 or 9000 X3D chip. Not a problem. Now, on the 2 plus 2, right, where 2 is meant for your SoC, this is on 60M choke. And the other, which is miscellaneous, which is also 60M choke. So you see, it gives stability and sufficient amperage on the area they cater for, which is very stable. Now, next thing is that, okay, before I talk about the VRM cooling, over here is known as the 1718 socket. See, I'm getting excited. It can cater a 7000, 8000 or 9000 series processor from AMD. And at the lower section over here, there are a total of 4 DIMM slots. These are meant for DDR5, and it does support ECC or non-ECC. And it has a max capacity of 256 gig with both XMP and Expo profile of 8200. Now, do take note, when I mention about the max overclock profile, right, which is 8200, don't assume that you populate all the 4 slots with total of 256 gig of RAM. You can run at a max bus speed of 8200, inclusive of the cache latency. In fact, for AMD RAMs, right, dual RAM kit, be it 32 gig kit, 64 gig kit, or 96 gig kit, or even 48 gig kit, the best sweet spot is at 6000 to 6400, which is the bus speed. And as for cache latency, right, it is either you get a very tight timing for lower capacity RAM, which is, I would say, CL28, okay, for a 32 gig kit, or a 64 gig kit which run at CL36 or even 38 and has a bus speed of, again, sweet spot 6000 to 6400. Don't go beyond that. Okay, now coming to the PCIe slot, where you are provided with 3 PCIe slots. The top slot, this is Gen 5 running at X16 full speed, no lane sharing, and it's being controlled by the processor. Else for the bottom section, these two are Gen 3, which is run by the chipset, and the mode is at X1, and again, no lane sharing. For the M.2, now speaking about the M.2, a very unique style to remove off this is toolless. You just need to swivel this point, pull it out, and that's it. And you expose the thermal pad at the top. And having the first slot, this M.2, and the second slot, M.2, these two are controlled by the processor. Else, for the bottom section, this is run by the chipset. The top slot here is Gen 5, the second slot is Gen 4, and the last slot is Gen 4. All these are backward compatible. Again, no lane sharing. Now, earlier on, I'm so excited is because I want to show you the VRM, and I got to apologize to Gigabyte that I had to do this because I am very curious how they design the cooling. As I run this board and doing the benchmark, right, I was amazed with the MOSFET temperature. Okay, by the way, this is more than sufficient. Oh, speaking of which, see, I'm too excited again. Now, speaking of which, right, this thermal pads on both sides, which is the bottom and the top section, is only located at the top M.2 slot. Else for the second and third, right, you only have the top. So take note on this. By the way, to place this whole shield back, right, take a look. You have this, right, aligned to this, and you can just put it back. Okay, let me just do it properly. See, that's simple. And also another thing that I forgot, if you want to port in your M.2s, right, these are spring release mechanism. You can just port it in without having to push anything. Okay, plug your M.2 and just press it down. And if you want to release it, right, just press, or should I say, leave it up, and this M.2, right, will just spring up. So that's how you remove off the M.2 and to insert the M.2. Now, coming to the part where I find it very amazing. Why does the MOSFET stay so cool? there is a reason why. Okay, Gigabyte, I'm so sorry to say this. I need to show this to all the viewers. Fantastic. Okay, this is the whole VRM, which has a chamber pipe linking from one aluminum heatsink to the other. And best part is that, okay, let me just put this one side. If you have not noticed, right, see this ventilator hose, it relieves off the warmth that's captured underneath here. See, this is the plate underneath here. Okay, those holes that you see at the back, right, is releasing all the warm air. I mean the warm air out. Now, this heatsink itself, since it's with the chamber pipe, or should I say a pipe chained to another section, right, this whole casting is very rock solid, and it has good fin stack array, so this will absorb more heat and to dissipate more heat. Now, a lot of you have listened to my past motherboard reviews where I talk about the concept of a cup and a plate. If you pour hot water in a cup and a plate and leave it one side for about a few minutes, when you come back, right, you can drink the water on the plate compared to the cup. Reason being, right, the plate has already dissipated most of the heat as compared to the cup. So same concept over here, whereby you see this plate over here, this armor shield, this VRM heatsink is rather flat. So this represent the plate. Imagine that all the heat that's accumulating over here, right, with all these fins also helping out with the dissipation and such, it goes to this plate, and this will give off heat off. And with the assistance of all the warm air dissipating, some of them will be dissipating at the bottom. With those ventilator holes, it helps heaps. So this solves the mystery of why I feel that how come when I run the benchmark on this motherboard, right, how come the MOSFET is so cool? So this is the reason why. Alright, before I show you how cool the VRM heatsink are, these are the settings that I've actually done. This is the UEFI in advanced mode, and I've set the expo profile, and to set the title timing, and also to set the U clock to this, which is equal to the memory clock. That's all I've done over here. And over at the advanced CPU settings, I have set the precision boost overdrive, and I've set to enable advanced. For the PBO limits, I'll leave it auto, and for curve optimizer, I will set to all cores to -20. And as for the curve shaper, I've done mid frequency. Okay, there are mid, high, and max. So I've done enabling with my own curve gradually, which is all negative value. Now, why am I doing this gradually? Based on the fact that I wouldn't want a certain shift of the curve, or should I say from the load line calibration. That's the reason why I'm doing this. A lot will just do the high temperature and leaving the mid temperature and low temperature as as auto, which I don't feel is good. Well, this is just my personal style of doing PBO2 limits. I will just gradually make it. Make it pull instead of having an aggressive pull. So this is what I'm trying to do. Okay, once I'm done with this, right, I'll take you to Windows and let you see, the 30 minutes benchmark run. In fact, I've done a couple, or should I say I've already done it, running 10 minutes throttle test and 30 minutes stress test for about 3-4 sets, and I witnessed my own eyes on how the VRM cooling is. Okay, this is done. I'm just going to save this. Oh, Besides this, for the smart fan curve, now as you can see, I leave this at normal. Then for CPU upright, which is this, I will have to set this to full. This CPU op, in fact, as I mentioned to you, you can plug this. You can use this to plug your AIO pump header, which I did. So I'm just going to run it at full, and I'll save this everything. Okay, let me just double check on the CPU fan. Okay, this should be PWM. Yep. So right now I'm just going to save and show you the result. As you have seen, those settings that I've done in UEFI, and I did conduct the Cinebench R23 test, be it the 10 minutes or the 30 minutes, for a couple of rounds. And not only that, I run together with Firmark, so to push the processor even more, as in like to stress it. Now, this is part of it where I show you the hardware info while it's running, right? The 18 minutes on the 30 minutes stress test. So this is actually what happened. I was quite shocked with the results. As you can see, the chipset, which is the B850 chipset, is hovering around 43.8 degrees Celsius. And as for the PCH, this is the platform controller hub, whereby it controls all the SATA, the PCIe, the IO and such, and it's hovering around 42 degrees Celsius. And look at the VRM MOSFET, which is actually the VRM itself. It's hovering around 43, 44, 43, 44. The temperature is fantastic. This board does come with a onboard audio, which is making use of the Realtek ALC 1220 codec, and it's of 7.1 channel high definition. As for the connection, this is meant for your front IO, headphone and microphone jack. You're provided with two 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, followed by a legacy 12V RGB connector. Next will be the PPM module socket, and there are a total of four 4-pin PWM fan headers, where it says system fan 1, 2 and 3. And for this, which has the indication of fan 4 underscore pump, this is meant for you to plug. Let's say you're doing your custom water looping and you have this pump, right? Make sure you connect to this, as this will provide more amperage. Next will be the LED demo socket. Well, if you do plug a positive and negative cable to this, right, having, I would say, 5V, it will show the underglow of the ARGB effect underneath the chipset heatsink. Next, you have two USB 2.0 socket, and this is the front IO connector, where you plug your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED and your hard disk LED. As mentioned to you, it comes with this Q connect. As you know that some of the cases, right, you have separate connectors, and you will need to find which pin to which pin, and you have to connect on the motherboard. Instead of that, Gigabyte have given you this. So all is needed, right? See their indication over here? It's very easy. So you just fit those connectors to this one whole socket, and you just plug it in. It's that easy, see? And if you want to do maintenance, right, instead of unplugging individual pin, you just unplug the whole thing. And once it's done, right, you just plug it back. Instead of having to, fiddle, if you do maintenance, right, having to fiddle as in like remove all the pin, and when you're done with the maintenance, where you have to plug the individual pin, it's very, very time consuming. So this is very useful, see? It's either plug or to unplug. Simple as that. Now, right at the top over here, there are two pins. Okay, probably I'll just zoom in. Okay, right at the front IO connectors, right, there's this two pin over here. This is your clear CMOS button. And above this is known as the RST switch. If you connect this pin to your front reset switch, right, you can program this, which I will show you how. There are some usefulness on this. How does the RST switch work? In fact, it's pin. I've connected my open bench power switch to here, so it will act as triggering the RST function. Now, just going to show you in UEFI. This is UEFI, and I'm going to the advanced mode by pressing F2. Just head down to settings and select miscellaneous, and you will see the RST switch configuration. If you click on here, right, see these are the functions that you can do. I will set it to set up as BIOS. Now I'm just going to save this and show you what's going on. So while it's loading, right, this is pretty good, whereby if let's say you're doing overclocking and such, or maybe undervolting, right, and you are stuck or freeze in Windows, instead of pressing the reset switch, right, you can just press this button where I've set it to configure to be in BIOS. Okay, see, this is actually Windows. So I'm just going to enter. Now, assuming you are doing all the benchmark and such, and it freezes, what happens if let's say it, just freeze and you have to press the reset switch and to press the delete key into the UEFI? For this function, right, let's say it freezes, right, you don't have to worry. Just press this button over here, the power switch, which is connected to the RST, which I've set to boot into BIOS. So when I press it, right, take a look what happened. It will just trigger and bring you straight to the BIOS page. See? Okay, let me take you to the front. Now, as for the front, this is meant for your front USB Type A port, followed by 4 SATA port, which is right angle. As mentioned to you, for the M.2, if you populate all the 3, right, there are no lane sharing. Same goes to your SATA. You can add additional 2.5-inch SSD or a 3.5-inch hard disk. So total storage that you can carry is 7 devices, and they are not shared at any means. Followed by a Type-C socket, which is meant for your front I/O Type-C, and this has a transfer rate of 20 gig. Now, this is very useful. In fact, it's a HDMI port that has the capability to project up to 1080p, which is HD. Now, this is meant if you want to place a internal LCD screen, be it 7-inch or 8-inch, you can make use of this port. And this is also act as a secondary monitor within the system itself. Useful. This is a useful port. Followed by a 24-pin connector where you connect your power supply 24-pin cable to this to supply the power to all your motherboard components. Now, there are 2 switches over here, which I will talk about it later. Right in front of the switch, there are this debug LED. So in the event if you boot out the system and there are errors, right, it will light up. Be it your CPU, your VRM, your graphics and such. This will light up, telling you that hey, there's an error over there. Please rectify it. And this 2 switch, right, now fantastic. You can test this board outside the case, where it provides a power switch, which is the lower section, and a reset switch. Next, you have a 3-pin 5V ARGB connector again. Right at the top, you have the CPU fan and the CPU op. Now, as some of you have witnessed that I've always mentioned that do not plug your AIO pump to the CPU op. But for Gigabyte, right, it's slightly different. The CPU op, in fact, this is CPU op, sorry, this is CPU fan. For the CPU op, right, you can plug your AIO to it based on the fact that you can control it. There is an interface in UEFI where you can set the pump, the percentage of how much you want the pump to rotate. I would advise is either you run it full or 80% of the pump and not doing PWM, okay, that will damage your pump. Now, at all times, make sure that be it your radiator fans or your air cooler fans to be plugged to your CPU_fan, because this is the primary sensor, or should I say the primary header, to indicate that whether there are functioning fans on your air cooler or your radiator. Take note on this. Right over here, you'll be given 2 sections of socket for your EPS cable on your PSU to be connected over here. Now, if you notice, right, there's 8 pin and 4 pin. At all times, right, if you're not doing extreme overclocking, plug only to the 8 pin. Unless you're doing overclocking, extreme overclocking. But I don't think you should be using this port to do extreme overclocking. I would say that slight overclocking, if you want more power for the processor to draw the vCore off from the VRMs, right, then you plug the 4 pin. But for simple usage, just plug 8 pin. Okay, and you might ask, can I plug both? Will it affect anything? No, it doesn't affect anything. It's just the additional cable. You can plug both just for aesthetic. At the rear, you'll be provided with a DP port. This is version 1.4 and has a max capacity of 4K 144Hz. And this is making use of the integrated graphic on the processor itself. Next will be a Q Flash Plus button. This is known as the BIOS flashback. You can update your BIOS version without having to plug your processor or your RAMs. There will be a total of 11 Type A ports. The black ones over here, this is version 2.0, and followed by 5 version 3.2 generation 1, which has the max capacity transfer rate of 5 gig. And over here at the red ones, these are generation 2, which has a max capacity transfer rate of 10 gig. Right at the bottom, you have a Type C port where the transfer rate is at 10 gig. Now, something which is very useful, whereby if you have external storage device that has a transfer rate of 20 gig, right, make use of the front Type C port instead of this, so you don't have to feeder all the way to the back to plug, which is very handy. Followed by a Wi-Fi 7 socket that support Bluetooth, and you have a audio section where you have speaker out, known as line out, then your microphone and a SPDIF socket. Now for the Wi-Fi connection, right, it's very convenient, not like the legacy where you have to screw in the antenna to it. And this is how it looks like. This is the antenna end. So all is needed is just to plug it in and you'll be in place. If you want to plug it out, just pull it. It's pretty straightforward. Now this is just a test on the internet connection, be it wired or wireless. In fact, I'm more interested on this Realtek 8922AE Wi-Fi adapter, and I'm not too sure how it goes, so right now I'm just going to test it, showing you the status. By the way, I've disabled the LAN connection or the wired connection, only the Wi-Fi, and this is the speed itself. The ping rate is pretty good and it's pretty consistent. As you can see, it doesn't drop, it will just hover around there. And some of the network adapters, right, there are weakness, it will drop. Just gonna do another test again. Okay, I probably will have a different location. Nope. Let's see. Yep, okay, this is Indonesia, so just gonna test it again. The download speed, getting very good ping rate, very consistent, even better connection, that is good. And let's see how the download is, because some of the Wi-Fi adapter, when I tried, right, they will fluctuate. Yep, going strong, is still hovering around there, which is good. Okay, now I'm just going to disconnect this, or should I say disable this, and enable my wired LAN cables, and to check the 2.5 Gigabyte Realtek, I should say the Realtek adapter. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is good. Ping rate is very solid and is consistent on the download. Same apply to the upload. So this is actually what you expect from this motherboard itself. Now I'm just going to test another time at a different location. No, same location. Okay. Alright, here we go. See, it's very consistent and the ping rate is very good. Now probably you might say that, oh, this is actually local pinging, but that's how we actually test the network connection within our area. Of course, some of the regions, right, will not have very high, transfer rate and such, so this is expected. But overall, I would say that the adapter on the Wi-Fi card and the Ethernet, port, right, it does check out very well. The ping rate is good. The download and upload, as you have seen, is very consistent. I've set up the system just to show you the RAM training timing or the RAM training cycle, where if you are changing platform from Intel to AM5 platform, this is what you're going to witness: a longer period of time to boot into UEFI for the very first time. Okay, just for the very first time. Same goes by if you are migrating from AM4 platform to AM5, you will witness the same. Now, also take note that the amount of capacity of your RAMs does affect the RAM training timing. The bigger capacity you have, for example, this is 32 gig. If you are to plug into 64 gig and 96 gig, right, it will take a much longer time to boot. Probably I would say 3 minutes or so. So right now, since this is 32, just to show you, on my left there is this black screen. This is connected to this motherboard. Once this load into UEFI, you will see the dashboard on the black screen with the UEFI interface. And there's a stopwatch over here. The moment I press on start, the start button, I will click on the timer. So just to show you and how long it takes to boot into UEFI. Here we go. At this period of time, you might see that the LED, the debug LED is not moving. Do not shut down the machine. It might take some time for it to cycle. Just leave it as it is. You can take a cup of coffee, cup of tea, then come back to see whether is it boot into UEFI. Alright, so at all times, do not do any reset, clear CMOS and such. If you keep on repeating that, right, unknowingly that it's doing the RAM training cycle, you will damage the board, that's for sure. Now, as I mentioned, it will stay there for quite some time. Looking at the stopwatch, as you can see, it's around 40 seconds. It's still not booting up. See, right now it started to cycle to a second phase, and it will just read and read. Once this is verified, right, this is only for the very first time, and the following sequence, when you reboot the system, right, it will not be that long. See, right now 1 minute is still not loading up yet, and hopefully it does boot up. Should be around. Okay, see, it takes 1 minute 9 seconds to boot up, and right now the motherboard have verified your RAMs and all the components that you plug in. Now, just to show you, if you are to reset the motherboard or start from cold boot, okay, I would probably click on the interface first, just to show you. Okay, this is the UEFI interface. Now I'm just going to reset the timer. Alright, most of my motherboard reviews, right, I've been doing reset. Right now I'm just going to shut it down permanently and to boot up from cold boot, and you'll see that how long it takes. Again, doing the same sequence, I will press on the start button together with the stopwatch. Here we go. As mentioned to you, once it's verified, right, the second time when you boot, right, it will be much faster. So don't do anything, do not touch anything, leave it as it is. It should boot up in no time. See, it takes 17 seconds to boot up. So this is how it reacts in AM5 platform. My honest opinion of this board, and with the first impression, there is only one word: splendid. Even the name of the motherboard, Gigabyte B850 Aorus Elite, thus matches what this board can deliver. You have witnessed that I've shown you how cool the VRM are when it's running at Cinebench and Firmark. And best part is that for a 9950X, the base clock is 4.3 at default setting, which I've done. And I only did a little tweak, which is on the curve optimizer and the curve shaper. And guess what? I can go beyond 4.9 to 5 gig base clock consistently without having any hiccups. And it's holding very well with the current due to the fact that the cooling solution provided, right, enables the processor to sustain at that frequency. So there is no struggle or such. As you have witnessed, I've shown you how cool the VRM is and how cool the chipset is. So that's a bonus point. And it is not built just for look. This beefy rear VRM heatsink, which I mentioned, this is of 50mm thickness. Having this, right, is giving more than enough surface area for you to dissipate heat off from the VRM to this block over here, or to this plate. Same goes to the chamber pipe. It does function too, whereby as you can see, this is shorter, but it does transfer the heat to this bigger block. So you see, it does matches the word EV. In fact, this is a very matured board. Another factor is that it is aesthetically pleasing. Just that for my take, I have some, it's been objective on the design itself. If this were to follow, this area over here, if they are to follow the strip and the block, right, it will be very nice for me. But who knows, some of you might like this design. And best part is that this board not only come in black, but come in white. And I believe that would be much more astonishing. Now, besides this, the locking mechanism was good. The cooling solution for the M.2 is good. It's very simple. See, it's toolless. Even if you clip your M.2, right, you can just release at an instant. Not an issue. Now, something which I've forgotten to mention is about the PCIe slot, where you plug your GPU. When you plug it down, this will be in lock position. And to release your GPU, press this button and this will remain released. So you can have both hands to hold on the graphic card and to pull it out. Nice thought. So there won't be any accident. Why am I saying this? Some of the motherboard, you will need to press on this because this has a retention spring that goes back to this original place. So you have to press on this and to pull the card, which accident might happen. You might break the PCIe pin. Now, besides this, right, talking about the overall functionality is very good too. You can test this port outside the case where it's given a power switch and a reset switch. Now, probably you might say that, hey, I wanted a digital LED debug. Well, that would be great. But based on the budget, or should I say the MSRP of this board, right, it's offering much more. This is what I mean. It's of value. Next thing is that I show you this IST switch, or should I say pin, which I connected to the power button. At point of time when you're doing overclocking and such, or maybe undervolting, right, in Windows and it freezes, right, the problem is you have to press the reset switch and to tap on the delete key in order to get into UEFI. But for this switch over here, you don't have to, which is programmable. All is needed is just to press the button and you take you straight to UEFI. Nicely done. This is one of the concerns which I think that Gigabyte should improve on. Now, based on the fact that you have plugged a GPU at this top slot, the PCIe slot, and right below, these are all the M.2 area, where the first slot, okay, this slot over here, is a Gen 5. What if someone were to populate a Gen 5 M.2 and it doesn't have its own heatsink? Making use of this heatsink, you have a graphic card at the top and your M.2 at the bottom. The generation 5 M.2 will generate lots of heat. Plus, the AIB cards, it will blow all the hot air on this plate itself. So will the Gen 5 M.2 throttle? So that's my question. But if you were to populate all with Gen 4, right, not an issue. It will definitely have sufficient area to cool down. Now, besides this, right, who is the one should have this board? I would say that if you are a gamer, wouldn't want intermittence, wouldn't want lags and such, right? This is a very matured board. As proven, the performance, the cooling is superb. So this is for you. And for light content creation, yes, this board is also for you. Based on the fact that though it doesn't have the USB Type 4 Type C port at the back, you do have two Type C, one at the rear, one at the front. And most conveniently, the 20 gig transfer rate is at the front, not at the back. So if you have devices which has, you know, high transfer rate, which is 40 gig and such, right, you can plug to the front. So easy access is very convenient. Nicely done. Besides this, I have nothing much to talk about this. And some of you might wonder that, hey, Cleo, you used to show all the UEFI easy mode and the advanced mode. Well, this is right after what I've concluded, because some of you have commented that, you know, that section, right, is rather lengthy. They just want to know what's good about the motherboard. So I've deliberately put this after I've commented what I think about this board. So you can watch it at the back. With this said, I'd like to thank Gigabyte to have loaned this unit for me to share with you guys. And for those of you who are actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to hit on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see you. This is the UEFI interface, as there are two modes, easy and advanced. Starting off with the easy mode, right at the top you have help. If you click on it, it will show you all the short keys on what to press. Take for example, you do have the advanced mode, right? So if you click here, it will go advanced mode, or you can use the short key as listed on the help where it says F2 advanced mode. So when you press F2, it will go advanced mode. Then next will be the language you can set. So it's all up to you. Load default, this is whereby if you did all the configuration and you want to erase everything, you just load default. Save and exit, self-explain, I don't have to mention about this. For favorites, I will talk about it later. Next will be the search. For example, let's say you know there's a certain function in your UEFI, and instead of clicking and clicking or searching for it, right, you can just click on this and you can just type. Okay, and you search. See, it will list. So you can just click on that function and to trigger whatever you need. Now right at the bottom section over here, where it will show you the information of your motherboard, your BIOS version, the processor that you're using, the BIOS AGISA that you're using, and your RAMs that you're using. And right at the center over here, it will show you the clock frequency that's running on. By default of this 9950X, it will be at a 4.3 gig speed. Then this is the CPU temperature, the voltage, your memory timing and such, followed by this X3D turbo mode. Well, I wouldn't know what this is for, but I have read through the internet saying that do not trigger this for some reason. I wouldn't know why. Probably you can do some research on that. Then with this section, it will tell you what are the RAMs being populated, which is a 32 gig kit. And on this section here, right, as you can see, it shows the RPM of the fan here. Now, if you click on the Smart Fan 6, right, this is what you're going to see. As this is my CPU fan, which is the radiator fan on my liquid AIO, these are the configuration that you can do. You can set the speed to silent, to manual. Manual meaning you say you set the curve point. As in like according to the temperature, you want to bring up the RPM of your fans. So you can do this through manual, or you can set it to full. So with this say, right, next thing will be the CPU out. Now, as mentioned to you, this for Gigabyte, I have misunderstood that you can't plug it to the CPU out where there's no control, but it seems to have. So you're able to plug the AIO header or the pump header or pump connector to the CPU out and to trigger all the settings over here. See? So I can run at full speed. Right now it's actually run at maximum 100. Consistently, your pump will be rotating at a full load, or should I say full RPM. Now, I forgot to mention, when you're doing your fan curve, right, you see all this point over here. Besides using the graph, if you to set it to manual, right, see, you can key in the point that you wanted. See, it will just follow. So you can do point by point. So it's either you use the graph or use this. Nice function. And of course, on the lower right, you have this CPU fan fail warning. Well, you can enable this so that in the event, if let's say while your system is running and your radiator fan, let's say, is not running, the motherboard will signal you, telling you that, hey, look, your CPU fan is not working, please check on it. Okay, you can enable this, very useful function. And right at the bottom, these are all the temperature of your CPU, your platform controller hub, your VRM, CMOS, I mean your MOSFET on the VRM heatsink, and etc. Okay, now here it's listing all the M.2s or your storage that you have plugged in, inclusive of your SATA connection. And also for boot sequence, right? Okay, take for example, this is the FireCuda and this is the Gigabyte. Now, assuming that FireCuda is Windows 11, and for the Gigabyte, right, it's Linux. So if you want to do a switch, as in like you do not want to boot to Windows, you want to boot to Linux, you can just drag and go up. See? So this is what it meant by boot sequence or boot priority, I should say. Over here, this is the expo profile where you set your RAMs. If your RAMs have dual profile, which my King Banks have, you will have these two profile, the XMP and the expo. But for AMD platform, right, if your RAMs is down, I mean your RAM do have the expo profile, make sure you set to expo profile, and you can trigger the XMP or expo profile in high bandwidth support. This is to fasten up the speed. Over here, this is the resizable bar for your graphic card, and you can click on this Q flash. I'm not going to click on this. This will take you to an interface where you can update your BIOS in UEFI. CSM support, I'm not using this. This is legacy stuff. Now, for the preference operation mode, this is whereby if you were to boot to UEFI, right, which would you choose? You want it to be easy mode or advanced mode. So every time when you boot to UEFI, right, you will stick to the configuration that you have set. For fast boot, well, this is self-explained. I wouldn't have to mention. Now, coming to the... Okay, I forgot about the above. It will show you the information of your RAMs. Okay, let's say from the... see? It will show you all the JDAC and such. Nice function. And same goes to the B2. See? So whatever is populated, you can just click on the slot to show you the information of what the RAMs is capable of and what kind of JDAC profile they have. And over here, the SPD setup. This is meant for you to trigger manual overclocking. Okay, you can do the timing to a tighter timing and such. You can set up to you. ERP, this is actually energy saving. Now to the advanced mode. To enter the advanced mode, you either click this over here or press F2. And this will take you to the advanced mode. Starting off with the favorites, as you can see over here, right, these are often used by you. Take for example, let's say for Twinkle, I often use this precision boost overdrive enhancement. Take for example, you can press the insert key, take a look at the word disable. When you click on insert, right, there will be a star at the side. Meaning to say you have bookmarked to your favorites. See? And if you do not want it, either you can delete off from here or you can do it on the Twinkle. But this will be much easier. Highlight to whatever you do not need. Just press on insert. It will just go off. So this is how you use the favorite function. Now, on this section here, the Twinkle, these are the things that you can set. I'll just go through, and often that people will set this CPU clock ratio, as in like the base clock, right, will not run by default. You can set it to 50. Okay, it's all up to you. So you can choose to run at 50 or you can actually type in. See, it'll be much more easier. So right now I'm just going to type it back to 43. The rest, this I won't touch. Now, if you are wanting to just one click and go on the PBO settings, right, which some of you are experienced on how to do the PBO setting, this is a very neat feature for beginners, whereby when you click on it, right, there are certain levels over here. Okay, don't get confused. What you mean is that, take for example, the 90 level 1, 2, 3 till 5. Okay, the higher level you go, right, the more intensive it will drop, as in like the power consumption and your temperature. Okay, so what you mean is that you do not allow the system to run above 90 degrees Celsius, and you want it to drop down the temperature and the power drawn. Okay, and it also depends on your processor bin, how well can it pull. So you might say that, oh, I have mentioned 90 degrees level 5, meaning to say pulling much more lower voltage we call, or the wattage. Now, as mentioned, it depends on your processor. It might run, it might not run. If it crashes, right, please bring it to level 4. If it crashes again, bring it to level 3. If it crashes again, then level 2, and such, and so forth. So this is actually what it meant by the level. And for the first number, 90, right, this is to tell the system to not exceed 90 degrees Celsius. Same goes to the 80 degrees Celsius and the 70 degrees Celsius. Or, if you do not want to run at those state, right, you want it lower and a much safer mode, but not at a max. Max boost drive on your CPU, you can choose eco mode. When you click on it, right, there are a few options over here. You can set it enable. Now, when you set it to enable, right, this will tell the system saying that, okay, I will have a boost score of 4.3, but I will use the minimum power, wattage, and the vCore to, perform to that. To perform to that clock speed. Yeah, that's right. Next will be enable 105 watt, meaning to say you have toned down much more, so it will not perform as default. In fact, it will perform about half, I should say, due to the fact that this processor that I'm using, right, which is a 9950X, right, the max TDP will be 170, but on the PPT side, okay, sounds very confusing, 200. Anyway, this is just load half, as far I know. Or you can just disable it. By default, it's disabled. X3D turbo mode, well, as mentioned to you, right, as I read on the internet, try not to use this. Might have implication when you use the X3D application. The X3D processor, it might crash and such. Next will be the advanced CPU settings. This is often what I will use. So these are the settings over here. Now, for SMT mode, if you are not using dual CCD processor, take for example the 8-core 9800X 3D, okay, you can make use of this to disable it so that it will stay focused on your single core, which is pulling the most frequency and having the most load, or should I say having a faster environment for you to play games. Okay, for me, having two CCD, right, I'll just leave it as auto. I will not touch it. Next, precision boost overdrive. This is often that I will use. As you can see, you can set it to auto where you don't have the sub menu, but often I'll just set it to advanced. Now, for the previous setting that I've shown you, right, I'm making use of the default settings of the processor. That's why I set to auto, and I only touch the curve optimizer and the curve shaper. You're able to set it manually, just to show you. Okay, now these are not my settings. By right default of the let's see, the default 5950X, right, is this configuration. Okay, no, this is 160. Now, kindly note, all the settings, right, is only based on my default processor for 9950X. If you are using 9950X, yes, you can do this configuration. But if it's not, right, kindly do not use this configuration, alright? I wouldn't want to be responsible if you fry your processor. Now, having said this, right, often that my trick to play PBO limits, I know a lot will just, high and such. No, I'll just leave it as it is. I don't need to have, very high frequency where else it's not stable and such. I will just leave the PPT alone. I'll just leave the EDC alone. Then I'll pump the TDC for the 9000 series, which is my 9950X. Okay, I'll just leave this up. By default, if you do this right, the base clock speed will be 4.3. If you change this figure to 200 ampere, right, you will definitely have a 4.9 to 5 gig base clock, okay, and a max boost of 5.7. That's for sure. Now, why am I setting 200,000 and not 200? Take for example the wattage, right, by right. Okay, the configuration for the 9950X is at 200 watt on PPT. TDC is 160 and the EDC is 225. Take a look at the unit over here. This is milliwatt. Okay, if you're gonna set 200, right, it's gonna be very low. In order to set it to 200 watt, you will need to add 3 more zeros behind. So this is what it meant. 225000. Okay. Next, now some of you have weakness on internet. Oh, you're gonna set the precision boost, overdrive, scaler. Okay, you set it to manual, and you set this all the way to 10. Now, if you are gonna do this right, you're gonna fry your processor in no time, because this is drawing, it's pushing to draw more V core onto your processor. Okay, by default it's 1.335 volt on the V core. If you're gonna do 10 times 10 right itself, it will just push all the way. It can reach up to 1.46 and such. That will hurt your processor in the long run. I wouldn't advise you, if you want to play PBO2, right, to set this at all. I'll just leave it as auto. Yep. For the clock override, this is for the max boost. Okay, you can set it 200. Most will set 200 and such. But for me, right, I don't really do this, because it's like when I look at the clock frequency graph on hardware info, right, there are a lot of spiking up and down, up and down. I need consistency for my work, so I will not touch this at all. You can try it yourself. Next will be the platform throttle control. The thermal throttle control. You can set it. Let's say you wouldn't want this to be more than 80 degrees Celsius. So when the system reach 80 degrees Celsius, right, it will just stop there. It will not just pull. Okay, it will bring down your frequency just to cool down to the 80 degrees Celsius. But most of the time I don't really do this. I will just, I'll just leave it. GFX curve optimizer, I seldom use. This is to configure your integrated graphic. If you want to do so, go ahead. Curve optimizer, often used. Now, if you are using single core, right, quite simple. Just set to all core, negative. You can set max at 30 magnitude, and you go and run the benchmark and such. But this doesn't guarantee that it will not crash. So make sure you set it, do some benchmark, and play some games, do some application, do some compilation work and such. If it crashes, right, then come back to here, set it less aggressive to 20. Okay, or you can choose to be 25 and such. So long it's crashed, right, come over here and reduce the magnitude. Okay, now for processor that has 2 CCD, like what I'm having right now, I know that my processor can set to all core negative 20. Okay, in fact, this one is 25, the other one is actually 20. Okay, you can further fine tune by setting to per CCD. Okay, this happens if you have 2 CCD, alright, in your processor, which is the 9950X or the 9950X3G. These are the processors that have 2 CCD. inclusive of the 9900X. Yep, that's right. So long it's above 8 cores, you will definitely have 2 CCD. Right? See, as I told you, I've set this. This is to fine tune based on the the 16 core, right? First 8 core will be set to magnitude minus 20. The next 8 core will be minus 15. Okay, this is what I meant. But I know both can take minus 20. Just leave it. Now, curve shaper. Okay, this is very daunting. I'm not going to go through in depth, but just to explain to you that, you know, why I set this way, because I want it gradual sloping. Many of them out in the internet, they will not set the mid temperature or the low temperature and the mid temperature. What I'm trying to say is that, okay, take for example the mid frequency, right? You have the low temperature and you have the mid temperature. They will just leave it as auto and only set on the high temperature. If you're going to do that, right, I can tell you that you are spiking your processor, as in like a sudden drop in wattage, just to fine tune the or calibrate the frequency on that wattage. Now, for more information about the curve shaper, how you make use of it and such, click on my description. I will take you to another content creator known as Skater Bencher. He has a very good documentation on how to make use of curve shaper. Now back to the main menu. So this is advanced CPU setting, which I will often use to set the PVO. Right below, this is where you can set your RAM's profile. Now my RAM happen to have XMP profile and Expo profile, but since this is a AMD processor, right, I will just set to Expo. And at all times, go according to the technology of the processor. If it is an Intel, go for XMP. If it's for AMD, go for Expo. You won't go wrong. Next is to enable the high bandwidth support, which my RAM does support. That's why it's not gray out. Then core tuning, all this, I will not touch on it, just to show you. Then often set your RAMs to 1:1 ratio as a cycle, which is the U clock and the memory clock similar. If you want to know more, right, go search what is U clock and what is mem clock. Anyway, now advanced memory setting. This is where you can set the memory subtiming over here. Okay, you can set. I'm not going to touch it. Then this is to show you the info of your RAMs. As I mentioned to you on easy mode, you do have this too. See, if you were to click on the slot that you have populated, right, it'll tell you all the JTAG and such, and the wattage, and etc. This setup over here, okay, you can actually do your profile using the profile that you have and to pull. I normally don't touch RAMs at all, but just to show you. Now coming to the core voltage, the CPU voltage over here. If you want to do offset, you can. For the dynamic V-core, what you need to do is to set to normal. Then over here, right, where it says auto, right, pull to negative sign. Now, as far as I've tested most of the motherboard, you can go minus 0.5 volt. This will bring down lesser V-core, and or should I say, this will let the system calculate how much V-core is needed, and it will just offset by providing that amount of V-core, right, to sustain at the CPU clock speed. Okay. For SoC, I wouldn't touch. If you want to, you can go ahead. This is mainly on your VRM offset. I would not touch this because this will bring instability. But you can play with it if you want to. Then the rest, these are the DRAM settings for your voltage and such. Okay, advanced voltage setting. This is where you can set, see, the preset settings. Oops. Alright, you can, right now it's actually auto, so you can set according to per CCD and such. I will not touch on this. These are all the RAM settings. Then for VD miscellaneous, I wouldn't know what this is for. I'll just show you. Okay, other than that, yep, that's basically all in this tweaker menu. Under settings, platform power, you can set all this. These are all the energy saving and such. Okay, or resume, etc. I/O port. Now the I/O port is rather interesting. Okay, you can set the bifurcation. I wouldn't know how to pronounce this enemy. Sorry about this. You can set, but this is only on the PCIe lane that is controlled by your processor. Okay, and you set your resizable bar, or you can disable your onboard LAN and such. Now, for this Gigabyte utility download configuration, I would advise you to leave it enable. Okay, this is enable. See, over here. Why is this so? Because when you fresh install Windows, when you boot up, right, it will prompt you to install the Gigabyte Center, where that will draw or download all the needed chipset driver, LAN drivers, your Wi-Fi drivers and such in one go. Instead of in the olden days or olden ways, we have to go to the website to download the drivers one by one. Okay, this is a very good function, so make sure you leave it enable. USB configuration, up to you whether you want to disable, enable. Then NVMe configuration. Okay, you can do a self-test and start and such on individual NVMe. Alright. SATA configuration. Now, this is for you to set the hot swap. For example, let's say you plug in your SATA, hard disk, you want to pull it out while the system is running. Make sure you enable this hot pot. The pot hot plug. Right? If you don't do this right, and if you eject from Windows and you pull out your SATA, right, the SATA hard drive, right, you might damage it. So make sure this is on. Okay, network stacking, I wouldn't know what this is for, but you can have a look. See, it's either disable or enable. By default, it's disable. Next will be this, the LAN RJ45. It will tell you the version, the date and such. This is done. Miscellaneous, which early on I showed you. You can set the RST switch. Okay, when I press the power button, you just went to BIOS. Of course, these are the other things that you can set. It's all up to you. And you can set all the lanes. For example, let's say you know that your graphic card, the first lane, you're running at Gen 5. You just set it to Gen 5. Then for this, right, okay, if you're not populating, just leave it as auto. Then for the rest, like the M.2, you can set to using Gen 5 or Gen 4. Now, one thing good about this, right, if you know every single one of them, of your device being plugged into the respective M.2 and PCIe, right, if you were to set according to the generation, the system will not spend time to detect. Instead, you will just take it. Oh, you're telling me this is Gen 5? Okay, I will just go for it. So the boot time will be faster. Alright, now let me just go back to auto for everything. The rest, PCIe ASPM mode. I believe this is meant for some usage, which I do not know. 3D Mark 01 enhancement. When you enable this, right, you can go and run your 3D Mark. That might even give you better performance stats and such. But normally I just leave it as disabled. This I wouldn't know what this is for. And this is for the TPM module. Now, ABS CBS. I don't really touch this section over here. You can take a look. I will just show you CPU command options. See? I have no idea what all these are for, which I will not touch. Right. DF command option. Memory addressing. ACPI. Alright. UMC command option. DDR option. Wow, there are lots of subcategory. I don't think I'm just going to show you everything. too intensive. Anyway, these are all that you have. MBO common option. Okay, probably this I can show you because some of you might want to set your graphic configuration, right, to disable and such. That means to say force, or should I say fix the system not to run with the integrated, instead using a discrete graphic card. Now the rest audio configuration I will not touch. This I will not touch, probably just to show you these are things that you can do. PCIe loopback mode, no idea what this is for. I have no idea all this what they meant for. So yeah, this is the rest. Okay, I'm just going to leave this. Too complicated. AMD overclocking. Okay, this is where I told you about the okay, over here, the advanced memory setting. You can use it over here too. AMD overclocking. So when you do this, right, you can do the precision overdrive. See, it's the same. But only thing is that this menu, right, enable you to do the SoC uncore OC mode. This is for your RAMs. See, you can set it at enable. By default, it's actually enable. So this is how you do it. Now, next will be PC health. It will show you the voltage on all the current, or should I say the 12 volt rail, 5 volt rail and such. Okay, next will be system info. Well, I don't have to explain much about this. These are all the system stat on your processor, your RAMs and such. And of course you can set, oh, for time and date, right, if you need to set the time and date, you will need to click on the top right hand corner. See where this will show, then you start to configure. Okay, plug in device info. See, it will tell you whether you have your graphic card, etc., or even your M.2. These are just information. See the JDAC of your processor, I mean the DRAMs. Now, next will be boot. Okay, boot priority. If let's say, as mentioned to you, for example, this is the Windows 11, this is Linux. You want to set the Gigabyte to the boot priority. So what you need to do is just click on the first boot priority, change it to Gigabyte. See, it will jump. If you want it back, you just click it back. Alright. The rest, security option. I have no idea what this is for. Anyway, I'll just leave it to default. Now, at the point of time when you set all your configuration in your UEFI, you wouldn't want your sibling to touch. Let's say you're sharing with your siblings. You can set the administrative password. So this is the master password whereby they can't log into UEFI. But if you do allow them but don't touch your profile, you can set them a user password, meaning you say that profile belongs to your sibling, not you. Okay. Now, secure boot. This is often used if you are playing Valorant. Okay. For Valorant, you need to come to this menu here and set the secure boot to custom. If not, you can't play Valorant. But do remember, in the event if you want to reformat your hard disk, or should I say rebuild your OS fresh, make sure you come back over here to set it to standard before you do that. Okay, so take note on this. Other than that, prefer mode, all this I wouldn't have a clue what this is for. Oh, sorry, preferred operation mode, meaning to say when you boot to UEFI, whether you want it to be easy mode or advanced mode, it's up to you. I'll just leave it to auto. Last but not least, save and exit. Self-explain, I don't have to mention much about this. You guys can go and fiddle with it. Alright,